Well, you have a lot of very interesting folks who are looking forward to speaking with you this morning, Neil. Few people in American journalism have seen the profession from as many angles as our guest today. Neil Brown came up through traditional newsrooms, helped launch one of the most influential fact-checking projects in the country called PolitiFact, and now leads an institution devoted to journalism's future at a time when we question that. Brown is currently president of the Poynter Institute, the nonprofit organization known globally for training journalists, setting ethical standards, and supporting press freedom. Poynter also owns the Tampa Bay Times. Is that still correct, Neil?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. One of the key reasons Pointer exists.
exactly. We'll get into that too. But the Tampa Bay Times has long been regarded as one of the strongest regional newspapers in the United States. Probably doesn't hurt to be a part of a nonprofit either, but we'll get into that too. Before Poynter, Brown spent decades at the Tampa Bay Times, rising through the ranks to senior newsroom leadership. And during that period, he was part of the team that launched PolitiFact. And that's a project that puts rigorous verification and transparency at the center of political journalism, which went on to win a Pulitzer Prize. Brown happens to have an Iowa connection, which I did not know when I first asked you to join this call, but it's always nice to have the Iowa angle. He's a graduate of the University of Iowa, and I think we're going to have one of our professors from the University of Iowa on the call, maybe in a little bit, Ty Rushing. Oh, he is on the call. Okay, hi, Ty. Anyway, I'm Julie Gamick. I'm the founder of the Iowa Writers Collaborative, which consists of 60 plus individual columnists, including Ty and Art Cullen, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner on the call, and I'm sure we'll have others. I'll call on them first when it comes to the Q&A time. But welcome, Neil Brown. So glad to have you here in our midst.
Well, Julie, thank you. It's so good to be with you all. And I would not downplay that Iowa connection. In fact, it's one of my great sources of pride, and it's fun to see on this call some names that I got a chance to both work with, and Lyle Muller. And honest to God, we moved into a new house, my wife and I recently, and I was going through some old stuff and came across this spoof edition of the Des Moines Register that we did when I was at the University of Iowa. It pokes fun at everybody at the Register, which was remains a great newspaper, but was a great newspaper back in the day, but particularly Chuck Offenberger, Chuckburger, we called him. And this was all about the Pope's visit to Iowa back in 1979. And as Lyle will know, we have kept these Iowa connections strong. Me and my Daily Iowan mates, we're still in constant touch. And we talk about Iowa, both because Iowa is the bastion of independent thought and a strong history of journalism, and obviously very relevant to the conversations we're having today. So it is a treat to be here, and I'm happy to tell you all about Poynter and PolitiFact and all of that. But I just had to start with just how important my Iowa connection remains and influential it remains for me today. So
Well,
thank you for having me.
I love that, and I just have to say that when the Register cut back on commentary, it was kind of the last straw for me personally. I understand the market forces that cause these decisions to be made, but there's just so much rich history with the Des Moines Register and commentary and Pulitzer Prizes and all that, that it just, and I had been writing a column on Substack up until that point, and I thought, and people were actually paying for it. I couldn't believe it. Why would anybody pay for it? But they did. So I thought, if they'll pay for my column, I'll bet they'll pay for Art Cullen's column. And I'll bet they'll pay for Chuck Offenberger's column and Doug Burns, all three of whom are on the call, and probably others. I don't see him but anyway, that was what, four years ago now. And we have 60 plus writers. You know what, Art? I'm going to call on you first just to say hello to Neil and maybe ask the first question, and then we'll get into other Q&As from people on the call. Usually I spend more time with the guest doing back and forth, but we have so many great people on the call. Let's just jump right into interaction. Art?
Well, hi, Neil, and
Uh,
virtually welcome back to Iowa. It's it's colder than a well digger's ass right here today. You're in the right spot, I think, if you're in Tampa. And I guess my question is, how's the Tampa Times doing?
so I'm in St. Petersburg specifically, Tampa Bay area, and we renamed what was then the St. Petersburg Times to the Tampa Bay Times to serve a much more wider and regional audience. And the honest answer is, and I'm the owner, Poynter owns it, so I'm being super candid with you, and the answer is good, not great. Uh, um, COVID was a huge blow, as I don't like to say, but I say frequently about particularly metropolitan journalism, is that unfortunately when COVID struck, we had an underlying condition. And so it has had a particular uh, blow to obviously advertising revenue, to newspaper reading habits, even news websites. And then to boot, a year ago, hurricane blew a crane into the newspaper's building. And so now the newsroom is migrating over to Poynter, which is probably just as well anyways. And so I say good, not great. It's not totally an issue of print versus digital, which is sometimes how it's framed. We own a set of community weeklies that are doing quite well. We own a statewide print magazine on business called Florida Trend. It's doing quite well. The flagship still struggles because after COVID, the hit to um, readership and subscriptions was so severe that the Tampa Bay Times is in print only twice a week. It's obviously 7 days a week online. And, in this audience, which is not as old as it once was, that's kind of an old cliche, but still a newspaper reading audience, when the print frequency went down, revenues struggled. It's bouncing back, but it's bouncing back because of an investment in technology to make that digital user experience better. This is one thing that's also hurt news organizations from a standpoint of audience. We sometimes frame it as just print versus digital, but it's actually been a matter of print versus a bad digital experience. And you have to really invest in that so that folks feel comfortable getting their information online. Anyways, things are bouncing back some, and we're not in any danger of a reduction further, but it's been a rough 4 or 5 years that we're coming out of, and the hurricanes didn't help. The hurricanes didn't help at all.
Since
Well,
I'm a reporter, I have to ask a follow-up question. Are your community newspapers able to sell advertising, and if so, how?
Yeah, they're selling a boatload of advertising, actually, the community newspapers. And the answer is how is sometimes it's back to the future. It's feet on the street and a very reasonable price point that reaches smaller businesses. Um, with a lot of touches. And so, and then frankly, doing some legitimate neighborhood beat coverage. I think one of the challenges for bigger organizations that aren't the New York Times, but certainly the mid-level and the metro uh, news organizations, is you wind up undercutting what is your strength, right? Which would be local news and beat reporting. And the community weeklies have been able to pick up some of that slack. So they're actually doing fine.
Art, why don't you describe where you are with your newspaper? Neil, did you by any chance see the documentary film Storm Lake that featured Art and his family newspaper? If not, I highly recommend it. It's fabulous film about the struggles small town, independently owned newspapers are facing. But Art, why don't you describe a little bit about what you're dealing with, sources of revenue that you're getting that are a little not unorthodox, but out of the out of the typical revenue stream from legacy
Kind
media.
of shady. We're kind of shady.
No,
No,
you
uh, Well, yeah, the pandemic waylaid us as well. I mean, we were on a downward spiral anyway, but the pandemic just exacerbated it. And at that point, Doug Burns and I, Doug from Carroll, Iowa, an hour south of Storm Lake, both in western Iowa, which is depopulated and has a very weak retail environment now because of depopulation and consolidation. So we have to rely on philanthropy. We started the Western Iowa Journalism Foundation, somewhat similar to the Poynter Institute, to help fund rural independent newspapers. And so it's kept us alive through the years, helped us meet payroll. But it's very difficult when the main store in town is a Dollar General and a Walmart. It's very difficult to imagine how to float the boat with advertising revenue, and the potential audience isn't large enough in rural Iowa or rural Kentucky, for that matter, to sustain a paid readership model. So we require philanthropy, and it's very, very difficult to raise money uh, for a newspaper in a town nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah.
Uh, And so that's kind of what we're facing in rural journalism. And that's why I'm interested in how the community newspapers that you operate are actually selling ads when we can barely give away an ad.
Yeah. So a couple of points. Um, we're not a rural area, so there you go. You have a critical mass of places. But what you described, Art, is important to understand wherever local journalism is going on, which is it's going to take three legs of a stool, and if there's a fourth or a fifth leg of a stool, we need them. So it's gonna have to be a combination of some advertising, some reader revenue, and absolutely some philanthropy. But as you rightly point out, philanthropy is actually harder to get than it looks, and it's not a panacea. We've been working a lot in the last several years with NPR affiliates and other public media stations, which are very driven by membership and fundraising and philanthropy, and are the ones that are filling a need in many not rural, but just local communities for local news, particularly as other newsrooms kind of cut their way. And we're helping them work through other sort of products, which is journalism as convening, bringing people together for events and getting some sponsorships that way. And just coming up with sort of, frankly, some sponsored content, adding websites where we can so that there's some sponsored content that can bankroll some of the local coverage that you'd want to do. So it's a very hard playing field right now. Um, uh, Two things I would like to know. One, I mean, we're certainly trying hard to help news organizations everywhere, all kinds, provide all manner of diversified products that serve local communities with information that they can trust and believe, and not just try to cling to one existing model that we wish would come back stronger. So our kind of motto here is lead, don't lament, because
Mhm.
it's pretty exhausting to kind of go back and make a and resist a change that's sort of happened, and it's happened in terms of consumer behavior, news appetites, certainly the kinds of forms of journalism. There's organizations out there that are helping with content management systems or technological investment that smaller outfits wouldn't be able to do all on their own. So we're trying to bring people together in that regard. The second thing I want to just pause for a second and say, in specific to art in Storm Lake, which was that I was on the Pulitzer Prize board that awarded the prize for that work. That's just
Oh,
an honor
well,
that I
thanks. I
get to have.
appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, man. But in part because that level of local connection, be it both the combination of investigative work and taking a stand for your community, that's part of the recipe for success that needs to be replicated. As Julie mentioned, we're disappointed, those of us um, a lot of us at Poynter, and I'm a little disappointed even at the Tampa Bay Times that there's less and less editorial writing, reported editorial writing, not just opining, though, because the local editorial boards are an institutional voice to speak up for a community. And we think that, again, that gets a little bit away from the sort of blue-red cable shouting and sort of really supports the notion that from the ground up, we can begin to have more combination of civil discourse and serious accountability because the local community all is invested in things, even if there's disagreement is okay. But I think
Plus,
it's
why run a newspaper if you're not going to run editorials? It's just, you might as well go sell shoes.
amen. I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Anyways, it's
Well,
congratulations again.
Well,
I,
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, pulled our fat out of the fire.
No, no, you did. We just spotted it.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you. I can't wait to talk to you more. Maybe we do this offline this call because there's so many people that I'm sure are going to have questions. But um, it seems to me we've got to create the hybrid system between nonprofit, um, uh, for-profit, et cetera, and do what we can to grow emerging journalists at the same time. I've got somebody on the call who's a professor now at the University of Iowa School of Journalism. And Ty Rushing, why don't you join in and say hello? He's also a member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. And I see your mic is on, but I don't
Yep,
see.
you got it on.
Okay, there we go. This is Ty
Yeah.
Rushing, one of our best.
Hey Neil, how you doing?
Professor, how are you? Good to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
Hmm.
Do you have a question or, well, a comment? Maybe you want me to ask a question of you. I will.
I thought you had a
Okay,
question.
well, what are young students thinking about journalism today? Why are they going into this business?
Like me, they're sickos. No. uh,
Like you and
so
everybody on this call.
yeah. But it is really, really fascinating. So, like, our department at Iowa is doing well. We got a great professional advisory board. Like, we are growing our faculty. We're getting students in, and a lot of them are just kind of realizing how good, like, the journalism skills translate well into other fields. And then, of course, you got the ones who are hardcore who do want to go into news, and they're trying to find opportunities. And a lot of our new grads, some of them are struggling for opportunity and trying to find a job. And then other ones are like getting an internship at the Washington Post day one, and then they get that extended and they getting offered a full-time position. So like the job market is kind of like a mixed bag right now for a lot of our students, and we're hearing that from them. So look, I keep in touch with a lot of my new grads, trying to figure out what's going on, because so many of them don't want to take the path that I took, where I started off, I went to a community newspaper, then worked my way up to bigger and bigger, bigger papers and bigger markets and so on. And so many of them just kind of like want to walk in day one and get a job at the Des Moines Register or get a job at the Gazette or the Chicago Tribune or something like that, instead of just like kind of, taking the steps. They kind of want it all sooner. Like, so it's really, really interesting. I mean, like I said, the ones who really want to get in the news are very dedicated. Oh, Lyle has a question there.
Oh, okay. Lyle, go ahead.
Oh, he was just saying he wants to talk more about the program we
Yeah.
No,
spoke
it's
about
just I
earlier.
need to catch up with him later.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but one thing that's really cool and new that we're doing at the University of Iowa is so like I'm sure a lot of you heard about this a couple of years ago where the Daily Iowan purchased two community newspapers, Mount Vernon and Solon. So I helped teach that Iowa Community News class. So this is a class taught by Aaron Jordan, another former reporter, and I. And we alternate semesters teaching it. So I had it in the fall. She's got it this spring, and we work directly with the editors of those papers so that our students get real world, experience, covering these communities, telling stories, going out there, covering city council, covering school board, all that sort of stuff. And so like that is pretty cool because this is giving them a chance to see what community journalism is like and immerse in a minute. And so like I'm kind of also hoping that like, light the fire under some of those, under some of those students where they're like, oh, you know what? This is actually kind of fun. I actually like going to, cover beef days and going to city council and, going to the public library and covering this program and things like that. And maybe hopefully enticing them to get into community journalism rather than just trying to get like that top-notch job right away. Or what they they view as a top-notch job right away. And I actually do have one student who graduated last year. He was in a community journalism class, and now he's an editor of a small town newspaper in Minnesota. So I'm like, okay. And he talks about like, being in that class, like kind of inspired him to take that path.
I think that's really terrific, Ty. And I mean, I think we're watching that Iowa model, the DI model closely. I mean, I think these kinds of, sort of overlapping collaborations, in this case, even an ownership stake, I think holds great promise. We need to sort of fill in the gaps where things are getting covered and where you have an audience that wants it. I think I mean, listen, I've been certainly a product of being able to work at larger brands, but I really think in this day and age, relationships on the ground, beat reporting, having a connection to your community, is gaining some attraction and people see it themselves making a difference, and nothing sort of propels you more than seeing that, to be honest with you. So I keep up that good work, and I really believe that beat reporting is where it's at, however that's defined.
Neil, you have a broader perspective than most of us on this call in terms of what's going on in journalism around the country. Are there bright spots? And if so, what are they?
Oh, there's a lot of bright spots. In fact, we did a report last year and we're going to update it. I'm hoping in about 4 weeks, and I'll make sure I'll get your names, or I'll just go to the collaborative and make sure you all get a copy of it. I don't think it's my Midwest upbringing, but we're really believe in a much more optimistic story than it's sometimes pitched, not to be naive or unrealistic about the challenges that we described, that Art described, that you're all feeling about local news. But the truth is, there are some very interesting news sites. I don't really buy anymore the what I would call narrative of loss about news deserts and things like that. Not because it's easy and not because there's not gaps, but I do believe it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when we spend all our time sort of talking about what isn't or what wasn't. So I just was last week, I was out in LA. Five new news sites have launched in the last 5 months in the greater Los Angeles area, filling specific needs in specific communities. These are not national organizations. In fact, they're trying to pick up some slack left by the LA Times, although to some degree they're also filling needs that the LA Times never filled because that wasn't its mission. So I spent some time at a place called the LA Local, and it's an umbrella site with that's actually, I think, six communities, three sites that cover two communities each, including something called the Boyle Heights Beat. And it basically is much as Ty was just describing, in terms of the community, Solon and Mount Vernon, that the DI is covering. It's covering the communities with staffs of more like, I think they have maybe up to 18 people, but let's just say they're anywhere from 6 to 8 individual journalists on the ground covering communities. Today I was on, so LA just has three new news sites. They're posting regularly. They are mostly supported by philanthropy. So at some point, the marketplace will have to decide if they're providing enough value to support them. Let's hope they are. Um, but uh, but they're expanding local news, not retracting it. And they are covering areas that I say the LA Times wasn't covering before and isn't covering now. So I think that level of specificity is important. This morning, I was on a phone call with a woman named Wendy Thomas who founded something called MLK 50 in Memphis. And it is a very specific site geared toward investigative journalism in the greater Memphis area. So it's not every day, but it is um, writing about um, income inequality, law enforcement issues related to communities in the Memphis area. And I think the thing that you see with some of these success stories is they have sort of a relentless focus on who their audience
Hmm.
is. And they really are kind of ruthless about that's what we do, and we're not doing other stuff as well, where you sort of spread too thin. On a national scale, the Wall Street Journal has always been that way. It sort of knew who its well-to-do, business-oriented audiences and was a little bit more, again, ruthlessly focused on serving its audience and trying not to do other things. Now, that's not the best example because they've got a ton of resources. But I do think that we point to more and more folks getting into here's what I would say. People are exhausted by the nature of the news over the last 5, 7, 10 years. It's not a brand new phenomenon. But I don't know that people will avoid news. So I use the word exhausted, but not necessarily, I don't buy into the argument of news avoidance because I think to some degree it lets journalism organizations off the hook. You need to provide a service and you need to show your value and your relevance to your communities. And if you do that, I don't think people will avoid you. Again, I think we conflate this sort of ugly national cable-oriented debate with the state of journalism. I want to reiterate, I'm not naive about how hard it is. It's economically challenging, but I don't know that throwing up our hands is the answer. And I do see some pretty good examples around the country.
So added to the mix is the Substack platform, which allows everyone to be independent. God knows Art Cullen's not going to answer to anybody but Art Cullen. And but the Substack platform allows Art to generate revenue. Art, do you mind sharing how much revenue you generate on Substack?
Yeah, well, so I've got about around 7,000 total subscribers, about 780 paid subscribers, and it's about 65,000, I think, in annual revenue that goes to the newspaper. And so I'm just offering the column for free, and still 10% will just voluntarily pay. Uh, and then they get a subscription to the Stormlight Times Pilot as well, which is priceless. But so it's worked out very well for us. And again, but it's more difficult if you're the Humboldt Independent, a 2,000 circulation newspaper in Humboldt, Iowa. How do you attract traction on Substack when there's 10 people in Humboldt looking at it?
Yeah. But
These are the problems that we run into that are very practical.
yeah, and yet you are reaching a much wider audience than you were before. You're reaching a national audience. Of course, you're on a high.
Thanks to Neil Brown. Yeah. Yeah, it helps if you want a Pulitzer and have a documentary done about you. Uh,
Yeah,
Nothing
but
wrong with that.
okay, well,
like I say, if you're the Carroll Times Herald that Doug Burns owned and edited, it's a much tougher row to hoe.
yeah. Well, let's pull in Doug and let's pull in Chuck. Chuck, I see your mic is off. Doug, why don't you join next? And I've got Lyle Muller has some interesting information on something else we're working on. But do you have a question for Neil, Chuck?
Neil, thank you for being with us today. You've already interested me and intrigued me as I'm not running to try to run in a small now town newspaper or working for the Des Moines Register or being Chuck Chuckburger for anybody anymore. But I'm still interested in the field and having a good time. I'm from Shenandoah, Iowa originally, and I look at the struggling newspaper, which has now been Lee Enterprises has consolidated and reconsolidated, and two counties are now served by one paper, and not very well, that prints twice a week. KMA Radio is right there too. A strong news station over all the years and continues to be locally owned. And as I look at that, I think if I was in ownership down there, I believe I'd be trying to consolidate the radio station with the newspaper and have a strong video element. So you're kind of like running your own television station. My question to you is that model working anywhere that you know, is particularly in a smaller market? And secondly, are we beyond the old antitrust days where that was illegal to do that?
Yeah. Uh, so I'm not a lawyer. There may be some lawyers on the call, but I think generally we are beyond those antitrust days, and I don't think that would hold anybody back. I think you could marshal some resources to get over that component. So let's assume it's doable. I think your answer is correct, which is that partnerships and collaboration are the coin of the realm. I think there's doing some of that in Colorado. and I can try to get you some details there. It's tough. Partnerships are both vital and you need to tend to them and you got to find compatible partners. And the biggest key on a partnership like that is that not so much um, because of competition, but you want to figure out how to each bring something new and different to the table beyond just the distribution mechanism so that you're not just all doing the same work and wasting your time or not, or just generating more expense and not enough revenue. One of the things we try to work with organizations on, something that way back when was like, oh, don't talk about it, is I think many organizations need help with marketing and basically telling their own story about how valuable that they can be, or developing relationships. To some degrees, an old-fashioned bait reporter and an old-fashioned ad salesman were really good at working the relationship. And now we need to bring them together and continue to work the relationship. So it's a little bit back to the future, which is that I think some of those fundamentals could be honed even in a new form. I think adding video becomes a key component. It's not easy. Some people say it's not cheap. At the same time, you see what's happening out of Minneapolis and all that. There's just a lot of people with phones and they're doing work that's extremely vital and journalistic. I don't have a super specific answer for you, Chuck, but I think that is a completely practical and relevant approach. And I think we'd like to find ways to facilitate that more. And that's where I bring back to, and some other things that they could do together, like bringing people together, bringing experts together, working in schools, media literacy. We do a program and we're trying to get news organizations to do it. And we oddly say it's not about journalism, but it's working both in schools, but also with organizations like AARP to help people have their own power in sorting out fact from fiction on their phones or on social platforms if they had the skills. And the skills are very similar to journalistic skills. And you don't have to go to a journalistic site to do it. But if the Shenandoah paper or the radio station would convene some folks and like, well, let's work with you on how to be smarter on what you see on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it may be, then you've got some value, maybe get some sponsors and things can sort of snowball. The thing about, I think Substack is just been a tremendous addition to the opportunity to extend journalistic work and the kind of writing and thinking and conversation that you're all having in your various disciplines. Independent is good. We believe that as a core value. It's not the reality is you need some critical mass and some kind of collaboration to support it and to make money at it. It's really, really, really hard. I still think even for Substack, it's technically early days and maybe there's going to be some sort of shakeout about in collaboration so that more independent journalists, writers, artists, technologists can make a go of it independently, but you can still hold on to your independence and collaborate, and that may be the way to go.
We had Hamish.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. We had Hamish McKenzie, the co-founder of Substack, on one of these calls not long ago. And he loves our model. He thinks it's the future. I was able to do one of these calls with a group of journalists in Scotland last week while I was sitting in a parking lot at McDonald's.
Wow.
I love technology, but they're brand new and they're thinking about this collaborative model. What we have going is an alliance with the Estates Newsroom Project called Iowa Capital Dispatch. And they take some of our commentary and plug it into their readership. Iowa newspapers are then able to use that content for free. The only cost to them is that they link to the columnist column. So it's a win-win. If the columnist can pick up some subscribers based on it appearing in the Humboldt Times, it's good for everybody. So that's kind of what we're doing here. Lyle Muller, do you feel like talking about the thing we're kind of cooking up for?
Yeah, sure.
I didn't mean to turn this, but anyway, I like it. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, Neil, thank you for your public service at the Daily Iowan by giving a voice to little Sandy, who was looking out the window and wanting the Pope to fly over Iowa. That was
Uh,
that was
You have a
an
good memory.
important
That's right.
moment. Also, and I think I've shared this with you. I was working at Kicks IC Radio when that paper came out that morning. It was brilliant, including the picture of the rocket ship. The
Thank
But
you.
the United Press International picked up that fake story about the Pope flying over Iowa and ran it as a news story at 6 in the morning on their UPI feed. And so I was the person who called UPI and told them that they had fallen for a parody. Anyway,
By the way,
we
that
yeah.
validated what all of us had suspected, which was that the wires and TV were just ripping us off. So, or as we would call it today, aggregation.
Of course, yeah, of course. The And so we have this thing going on here. You'll notice that there are a lot of, other than Ty, there are a lot of fairly aged faces here. Laura's not aged, but a lot of wisdom here because we've had a lot of years. And what's missing is young people, and it's pretty difficult for young people to sustain themselves if they were to go out and just start a Substack column. People like Marissa Cavas up in Brooklyn are a rarity. But So we're going to try developing something here with the Iowa Writers Collective, where we try to get these young college students who are writing brilliant things. They're writing really brilliant things at the Grinnell paper, where I'm the advisor. You have the Daily Iowa and the Iowa State Daily and all of these papers, but you also have the Wartburg Trumpet and the folks down at Simpson doing stuff up at Buena Vista. So we're going to try to pull together a program where we can expose their work, get them experience in this milieu, and also try to keep Iowans informed where is a news desert. Storm Lake's lucky they have arts paper, but I'm not sure the Waverly Democrat or papers elsewhere are keeping up with pace. What type of advice would you give us on trying to develop a program like that, where we try to just invent a new model for young journalists coming out of college so that they can be actual working journalists, but also eat food?
Yeah, the eat food part is the hardest part of that, as you guys have well figured out. It's tough. So first of all, bravo. I mean, I think uh, it I don't want to sound too corny here, but it starts with we believe this is worthwhile and this is important, and not just because we're seeing uh, bright young people who are interested in it. I do think it starts with the fact that there is a complete um, fallacy in the notion of young people are not interested in news, young people don't read, young people aren't keeping up with the news. My experience is that's completely counter. So it's important that we don't buy into that narrative at all. And obviously, you've got the individuals of all ages that want to participate in the sort of partnership hub that you're sort of talking about. This very collaborative, I think, is another good example of that. I mean, a couple of reactions. Lyle, I know you've done this not just at Grinnell, but at Cedar Rapids and with the team in Iowa City. I think it is important to line up whatever number of core editing uh, talent to ensure that the opportunity translates into work that meets at least some standard. Now, by the way, standard doesn't have to be only one kind of form. I do believe that content creators are doing excellent storytelling. I am a fan of TikTok in terms of the ability to use both video and humor and other ways to reach people and create some vitality in the conversation and the news ecosystem, to use that word. So one of my pieces of advice is to get partners to contribute toward some kind of set of standards and sort of value proposition that you can share with your different audiences so they know what they're getting, and that you can sort of kind of have some quality assurance. Again, I don't say that out of a fear that the quality won't be good, but I think you'll be served if this stuff looks rigorous and rigorous and relevant. I'll come up with a third R word because you should always have three things, but maybe revenue would be after that. We'll see. Um, another thing I would say, back to the point I made to Julie a moment ago, is shout from the hilltops that you got it and spread the word. You're going to have to see if you can enlist, whether it's those same universities that have business schools or marketing programs, to market and tell people what you're doing so that they can check you out. Because the biggest challenge with Substack, with any of these new things, is that you're essentially become a one-off because it's not there's another word, replicated. You need to be fairly constant, even if it's with a diversity of offerings. So I would enlist some marketing and business school help to help both promote and then eventually fundraise. Fundraising is a separate skill. It turns out, I've learned this the hard way. You can't just have something good and honorable and think people will give you money for it. They won't. You need people who know how to fundraise around it. And then one other just reaction. I don't know how it's going to fit into the editorial content you're going to be doing, but I mean, as Art will tell you, one good high-profile investigation will begin to buy you some time and not only is it important to your communities, and it can be done across the state or across a region within the state, but you need some work that reflects some impact. You won't get that out of the gate, but maybe shoot for 6 months to a year from now that you're doing something that will catch people's eye so that they will remember where they heard it, and then it'll make a difference, and then you'll get them to keep coming back. But keep me posted on it. I'm interested, and I think you're onto something, and it's why, again, I am more optimistic than others, which is if you get some real talent, people will respond to good work. They just need to know it's there, and they need to know how you got it.
Yeah, and we would like to keep you posted on it. And you and I both have, spent years going to funders and finally getting a grant, and then 3 years later, you gotta either re-woo them or they're done.
Or
I
they're
mean,
done.
we're
They're
never
done.
done.
No.
The Julie has made contact with Emily Nash at the Knight Foundation, and Emily's interested in hearing more. And boy, oh boy, it sure would be great to have someone in a powerful position to know a lot about this project and endorse it and help us. And so, not burying the lead here, but I'd love to enlist you into that effort if this is something that you think is worthwhile as you learn more.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more, but just your description on this call, I'm very interested and applauded. Emily was actually at Poynter last week, and because now she's at Knight, and of course she's got great Des Moines credentials. But Knight is funding. It's interesting. Knight is funding a project, funding Poynter to do an ethics project, working not with journalists, but with funders so that they understand what journalism does. They understand the rules of the road. The idea being that we're trying to see if we can help funders see that journalism is worth paying for, not just in 1 to 3 year grants, but as like an ongoing enterprise. And that we're hoping that if we can get to the funders on the ground level, they'll feel like not just that they threw in with a good cause that they didn't understand, but they threw in with a good cause that has utility for them, and then that will be a way for more lasting funding. So, anyways,
Th-
yeah, Lyle, let's get in touch and tell me more, and I'll do
All
anything
right.
I can to help.
Thanks, Neil. It's always good to see you.
Back at you.
Neil, when I invited you to come on the call, it wasn't necessarily to get you involved in all this, but on the other hand, it really makes perfect sense because we're all sort of searching for the same solution.
Absolutely. I mean, we are definitely comrades in this effort.
Well, speaking of comrades in this effort, Doug Burns is next, and there's so much to tell you about Doug Burns if you don't already know. But Doug, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Neil, well, welcome to the call. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, I'm
blast.
a fourth generation journalist, longtime owner of the Carroll Daily Times Herald, a little bit south of Art Cohen, and you might be familiar with our paper. We were involved in a high profile lawsuit There was a police officer who was having a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl, and we did investigative reporting, reported on it, and were sued by that officer once he was no longer an officer. And we were in court for some time. We ultimately prevailed in it, and actually our episode, that led to anti-SLAPP legislation in Iowa. So I'm pretty proud of that.
As you should be. Thank you for that work, which, it still stands out. I fear the erosion of these victories, but bravo, Doug.
So one, there's a constellation of reasons that, the industry has declined and we face challenges. So around the time we were going through that, I'm on multiple economic development boards. That's just sort of the way my family's, I do a lot of writing, advocate for the community. So I've been on multiple economic development boards, and we were working with Congressman Ro Khanna from Silicon Valley to get a computer software branch in Jefferson, which was where Chuck Offenberger spends a lot of his time. And in doing that, I interacted a lot and got close with Congressman Khanna. So we approached Facebook with this concept of the Facebook Iowa Newspaper Association Informed Voter Project. And we were really close to getting Facebook to seed and populate newspapers prior to the 2020 Iowa caucuses with $4 million, so that we would have like a highly, highly informed electorate. And Facebook backed away from that. I got very angry with their one of the people we were negotiating with, talking with, and I said, look, if someday you're going to get dragged out of your house in the Civil War, and before somebody sticks the knife in you, you're going to wish you could have done something to save democracy. And then as soon as I said that, Neil, I was like, oh God, I'm going to get like arrested or something. That's I probably shouldn't have said that. And he got really quiet. And he said, this guy's name was Will. He said, do you really think we're going to be in a civil war? So we talked about that for a little bit. And then he said, we can't do the $4 million, but we can make you the smallest newspaper in the history of the Facebook Journalism Project. So I said, remember what I just said? That's over with, but forget about it. Anyway, one other thing I just wanted to let you know is just the work that Art Cullen does. His column today is exceptional. And one of our big partners in the Western Iowa Journalism Foundation is Lorena Lopez, the founder and editor of La Prensa, Iowa, Spanish language newspaper. So when you have Art Cullen's editorials advocating for the immigrant community, and then Lorena Lopez writing about her lived experience, and then she has somebody who's an immigrant from Africa working for her as well. That gives such strength to these Western Iowa Journalism Foundation funded organizations here in Western Iowa. So really take a look at that. That's the combination, the 1-2 punch of Art's voice and Lorena's voice. I think it's peerless in the nation.
Well,
Thanks, Doug.
I look forward to looking at it, Doug. But the point you make is very meaningful. First of all, there's power in numbers, and there's an alliance, and we have more in common than not, and often the case. And again, this is what I'm talking about: storytelling about our storytelling. So make sure that the awareness of those levels of collaboration and just how interesting the stuff is. Right. I mean, the fact that we're doing it isn't the thing. It's what we're doing is the thing. And you've eloquently laid that out. So I look forward to checking that out, and I applaud it.
I have a quick ask of you, and it's a long-going conversation I have with my friend Julie Gamick. So I can still get advertising. Like the line that I often use is, we're the last bastion of collective reality, and that any content you pay to put in our community newspapers. Community newspapers are the last bastion of collective reality. So you accrue credibility by that proximity, and we kind of give people a singular opportunity to do that. So I still think advertising is a big part of the revenue mix to sustain news organizations. And Art's right, we have a limited retail base, but I've been able to get to some political organizations, nonprofits, statewide groups, and make that case, and then be able to get them in not just community newspapers like Arts or the one in Carroll, but to get them into La Prensa, to get them into Ola, Iowa. And then the only statewide print newspaper is Black Iowa News. And I've been able to get a lot of people into Black Iowa News because you have that. At the end of the day, it's a curated audience. It's a terrific community newspaper, as Arts is. So I think advertising is still in the mix. Can you help me win that argument with my friend Julie?
Yeah, I'm on Doug's team on this, Julie.
Okay, all
I
right.
just want to be really clear. First of all, advertising is good content. Second of all, the sort of agency approach you're describing, which is you can share audiences and cross-pollinate, is a genuine revenue opportunity. It's actually what sustained a lot of digital advertising right now. I don't think we should give up on advertising. I think we should talk about more of it. I think I would talk to some of the nonprofits about revenue to advertise about the other nonprofits that they support. So I think that there's got to be multi-layering of this. And back to my multi legs of the stool, I don't think we should give up on advertising. It's just going to take some creativity, much as you've described, Doug, so that it's not just trying to make the same old sale to the same few people.
Let me tell a little story there. I was Art Cullen here. I was asked to come and speak in a nearby community, and the owner of the store encouraged me to do a story about it in our paper, and then they'd have the radio station call and do a story about it, and then they would buy an ad on Facebook, and not with us.
Yeah, no,
All right,
no,
wait.
That's what we're up against. That's the
That is-
reality.
That
I
is
know,
what we're
I
up
know.
against. Okay, I don't know, Neil. This time has flown. We usually keep this and close it right at 1 o'clock. But I do want to get Laura Bella on the call. I want to get former Des Moines Register editor Carol Hunter on the call, and I want to get Randy Evans, who is a former Register editor, who's now the leader of the Iowa Freedom of Information Council. And I think that's all. Oh, Carol Gunsberg too. Oh my, and Jennifer Morrison. Okay, let's go with Laura first.
Thank you, because I have to get to another subcommittee at 1. I'm sorry for the background noise. I'm at the legislature today. I have a media ethics question. At the legislature, the mainstream reporters, they would be severely disciplined or perhaps even fired if they even took like a cookie or any food that any group was offering for free at the legislature. And yet, politicians offer weekly, in some cases, Chuck Grassley and Ashley Hinson, they have weekly press calls that I have always been excluded from for my entire career. There are exclusive, occasional, very important briefings that the governor has held, that the Iowa Secretary of State has held, that I am excluded from. And I mean, I understand why journalists don't want to give up their access to those, but like I can't even get the Iowa Capitol Press Association to advocate for me not to be excluded from these briefings. I can't get people to pass along recordings after the fact so I can hear what Chuck Grassley said. He's basically making news every week because he's the chair of a very important committee. And I feel that, I mean, politicians can wield a lot of influence with reporters by selectively offering or withholding access. And where did we get to this place where it's more important for media organizations to hold the line and make sure that their reporters don't, get a free cookie at the legislature than it is to advocate for reporters to be treated fairly by politicians?
Laura, can I ask real quick, who do you work for?
I am an independent reporter. I have my own website and I report, I would say my editorial policy is similar to maybe like Mother Jones or ProPublica. So I have a progressive perspective. I'm not pretending to have no opinion on the issues, but under the First Amendment, they can't exclude me because of my viewpoints or my content.
Totally, totally. I just wanted to understand.
She's also a member of the
and you're credentialed at the Capitol, right? I mean, you can go to most.
Don't even get me started. I had to fight for 5 years to get credentialed in the Iowa House, and I had to file a federal lawsuit to get credentialed in the Iowa House. So it's been a whole long story for me.
But she is.
Well, I'd love to talk maybe more offline about it, but I will say that I do believe per se the Washington Press Corps that serves Senator Grassley, the I don't know about in Des Moines, but in Tallahassee, there is a definite problem with this level of I don't know, embedding to a fault, and I think everything you're saying is legit, and it's I would look for the AP and others to speak up much more richly to support independent journalists. I think that there is an accessibility. Lyle's been dealt with this over the years that is uncomfortable and is wrong. And I think your outrage is legit. There's no reason. Now, I mean, there's logistical, practical applications that have to be honored, in which case you have pools or something like this, but everybody gets a shot rather than just the usual suspects. And I do think it's become a challenge to see rigorous independent reporting out of state houses around the country. I don't know if the state's newsroom folks that you're now aligned with can be of some help as well.
Well,
But
they're included in the briefings, so they don't,
you got a real
they have
dilemma here.
access.
But I
We'll
just want to at
talk
least,
offline. I
well,
want to
and
let
yeah, we'll
other
talk
people ask their
offline, but
questions.
I do appreciate your outrage, and I think you got a good point here.
Okay, Randy Evans next, and then Carol Hunter.
Well, Neil, I wonder what in the climate that we're living in these days, where people have a wedge driven between them, how is your fact checking venture in St. Pete? How is that in terms of revenue for you? Has it been a strength, or because you guys were sort of out there in front of the crowd
Yeah.
back in the last century?
Wasn't quite that far back, but thank you. It's been very, very good, but we had a big blow last year. So Doug talked about his own Facebook experience. We and 7 other fact-checking organizations from around the country, including Reuters, USA Today, the AP, in fact, some others, had been doing fact-checking with Meta of Facebook to sort of at least confront some of the garbage that's on it through fact-checking. And that was throwing off a pretty good income stream that allowed us then to fact-check politicians for citizens. And so when Mark Zuckerberg, it's a business. We're big boys and girls. He decided to end that fact-checking program after 8 years, and that was a huge income blow that we've adapted for. But we've started to make it up, and so we will be vigorously fact-checking through the midterms. Um, you know, our membership, we have membership campaigns, kind of like NPR. That has gone better in the last 2 years than it had in the previous two. So we're finding a way to make it up, and we are dedicated and committed. We're doing more. We're trying to also to not just be the naysayers, like that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. But we're trying to sort of do more position work that shows here's what is true. Particularly now, we're thinking about branching out much more in the medicine and the healthcare side of it in light of the current administration, because people are desperate for sort of an independent, nonpartisan voice to at least put them in touch with experts to make some decisions in this environment where it's so um, uh, under sort of tumult, if you will. So I would say, Randy, it's been a difficult year, but not, we still believe it's a good business. We think there's some opportunities, particularly as if we can expand to some wider topics. And as I said, I think we're spending a little bit more time also trying to tell people what's true, not just what's not true. So you've got to adapt, and we got to market just like everything else.
Okay,
But thank you for asking. We're still very proud of that work.
Carol Hunter, so good to have you on the call. Yes, former Des Moines Register editor, now retired.
Neil, thanks so much for being here. This is kind of a piggyback on Randy's question. It's so discouraging when really careful, well-researched reporting is done, and it just kind of gets this, oh, fake news label, and people don't believe this very good reporting that's being done, whether it's by mainstream media or progressive, with perspective reporting, like the deep research that Alora Bellin does, or some of the nonprofit websites. I think there's some really good work out there, but do you see any sign that there's kind of inroads in getting people to believe in journalism again?
Yeah.
And also, what kind of best practices do you think we can use to build that belief back?
So it's a great question. We talk about it all the time. We hear this all the time. People don't believe facts anymore. Facts aren't valued. Nobody knows what the truth is, all of it. And so you can get depressed if you want to, and we do at moments. I won't pretend otherwise. I would say a couple of things. First of all, just to go back to the roots of PolitiFact and that work, this will not satisfy your question, but I think it's an important point. People say, "What do you do when the more you fact check, the more they keep lying?" And we have to tell people all the time, we never, ever, ever created fact checking or PolitiFact to stop politicians or, in some case, pundits and others from lying. That can't be done. That actually misses the point and is not how we grade ourselves. The idea all along was that when people hear stuff, maybe lies, maybe inaccurate, whatever word you feel comfortable with, that they would have some agency or some power to sort it out for themselves. I mean, we all kind of hate that, that Fox kind of co-opted the, we report, you decide, because it's not a bad point, right? But unfortunately, it has been hijacked for different meanings. But the idea of our fact checking was a couple of things. First of all, we're going to stay independent. Two, never ever, at least to PolitiFact, unnamed sources. You will be able to see
Right.
where the information comes from. We will then tell you how we came to our own judgments, whether they're an outright rating on our meter, which is just a wonderful device, but not really a thing, but or why we couldn't come to some conclusion, but here's what it is, so that you, if you are an audience member, can do some of the thinking and the homework yourself. Let's pause for a second there and say, the audience has some obligation to play. This isn't just to be fed by us, right? If you're not going to participate in your democracy, do a little bit of research or at least hit pause and see if you can figure out where stuff came from. We may or may not ever satisfy you. So you just got to basically, there's some folks you're just not going to worry about um, winning over. So the first thing we do, Carol, to be honest, is we just try to stay true to our values of where did it come from? Here's the best we could do. Don't overreach. Add context. A lot of times, misinformation isn't even because it's false. It's actually partly true, but it's been taken way out of context or things like that.
Right.
So, which brings me to the second and important point. I think more and more we need to work with sociologists and other individuals, other scientists in the journalism space or adjacent to understand how people process information and see if we can provide it in ways that they would then find more valuable or useful rather than just try to berate somebody over the head. I don't believe in scolding the audience. Um, but understand how people are processing it. And if there's language that we shouldn't be using because it's feels loaded or something, we should understand that. Um, but ultimately, you got to believe in this work of journalism. You have to show your audience the value. We always used to say we used to love it when we once did house ads when I was at the Times for PolitiFact and had Rachel Maddow and Bill O'Reilly side by side, and they were both screaming about how much they hated PolitiFact. We thought that is perfect because people love it when they agree with it. And so I actually have gotten away from even using the word trust in journalism because I think that's become code for I agree with it. And we have to be willing to work with our audience to engage in sort of some civil disagreement, fact-based, and sort of grow from there. I will say, lastly, it's going to be a long game. You got to dig in. You got to find funders. You got to keep going. But I wouldn't give up on our democracy or even on journalism. But the answer won't. And again, I want to say these creators, TikTok, some of these things can be part of that world, and we shouldn't dismiss it. But let's do it out in the open, and let's have some faith in the audience.
Thank you. So, Neil,
Thank you.
I never know who's going to show up on the call when I announce it Monday morning, and this has been a smorgasbord of terrific people. I'm so glad you all joined us. Carol Gunsberg is on the call. I don't know if you know Carol, longtime journalist, most recently from Voice of America. Carol, what is your takeaway from this call? Unless you have a question for Neil, but I'm going to let you kind of, if you wouldn't mind, wrap up what your takeaway from this call is, the role of Poynter and the role of what we're all trying to do here.
Well, thanks. And I don't know that I can adequately wrap up what Neil has been presenting here. Neil, by the way, hello from long, long ago. I used to be at the Miami News, and
Oh, that's
yes,
why your name is
and
familiar. That's
yes,
right.
and married Craig Gilbert, my longtime husband here. Yes, and he's out shoveling right now. Sorry, so he.
Well, you say a warm hello to Craig Gilbert, both of you, terrific journalists, and Craig, one great political journalist of our time.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I will happily relay that. And Neil, I have to amend my thinking a little bit because trust has been a big part of what we've been pushing for a long, long time. But I understand your argument, and you've talked a lot about transparency. And I will say that that was a big part of what I was doing with Voice of America for a decade. Um, those of you who are in Iowa, of course, probably know that Carrie Lake, the nominal director of Voice of America, has bought a townhouse. Let's see, where is she, in Davenport or
Or
yeah, and so is contemplating some political run in Iowa. Anyway, it there are some concerns that I have for my old agency, and I know that it's not what it was, certainly in the degree of coverage, but also in the kind of coverage. Uh, for years and years, for decades, the point has been not to be a mouthpiece of any of an administration, but to provide the context that Neil is talking about and to provide disparate voices and share that context. And anyway, now that's not it at all in the current version. Getting back to what Neil was talking about earlier, and something that I had read, I get Poynter reports all the time too. I know that Kelly McBride has also been encouraging witness, and I just wondered if you had 2 minutes or somebody can talk about the role of witnessing in Minnesota and elsewhere, the rest of us across the country.
thank you, Carol. Neil, do you have time?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick response. So Kelly's most recent column is one of the best ones she's ever written, in my view, and she called on all of us to be witness. And over the weekend, I was thinking a lot about this, and our National Advisory Board is coming to town a week from today, and I think we'll use this, Carol, as a great talking point, which is that, so first of all, back to the power of video. When you get it on camera, it's pretty, there's a lot to to witness there and to use the word. And as Kelly's column said, we should not be looking away. People need to hold up their cameras. They need to point them. It's not easy to say that because there's a lot of threat that goes with that. And so I don't mean to make that sound like it's a piece of cake or easy, but I think the more we can do in that regard, the more we should. Back to Pulitzer's, we gave a Pulitzer Prize to the young woman who took the video of
George
George
Floyd.
Floyd. That was not a journalist. In fact, she didn't even want the award. She just wanted to go to college. And so there were some people who were like, mostly it was hailed, because it was a defining sort of moment. But there were some in the journalism field who's like, well, that's not really journalism. And I think what we do need to do is to not make those distinctions because it was journalistic work, and ultimately back to the point, the readers will get a chance to decide for themselves if you can show them where it comes from and where it goes. So as I was watching this, the reality that people were filming the events of the past weekend, and that then organizations that had the wherewithal, like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal, were able to bring technical know-how, and I am better informed for it. I think this actually helps elevate that for people who have lost or maybe didn't understand the value of journalism, that even if it is a citizen-oriented piece of documentary work. Even if it's your neighbor who's witnessing, not necessarily your neighborhood reporter who's witnessing, it can, I hope, elevate the need for that level of independent of the government, whatever side you're on, independent of authority, view of what might have gone on so that we as audience members, community members, citizens can make our judgments about this. And so I'm hopeful that even if these videos are not taken by journalists, journalists are verifying, journalists are asking the follow-up questions, journalists are demanding accountability on behalf of citizens, that this is a chance for us to elevate the work we do and the importance of it. Because if I have any sadness of the last 10 years is that things I once took for granted, that everybody knows how important journalism is to democracy, turns out they don't. And or at least they don't anymore, and I don't think we can take it for granted. So back to my point, I can lament that, or we can find new ways to lead with it. So you raise a really great question, Carol, not surprisingly. We're sad about what's happened to VOA, which is an obviously, we've done a lot of work, Poynter did a lot of work with VOA journalists. It's just a terrific organization. But in any event, we need everybody have their chins up and eyes and ears open in society today, and we should support that.
Neil, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and all of those of you on the call who participated. What's your takeaway from this experience?
Well, we could have gone on for another 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then it might have been a time for a beer or something. I don't know. But I appreciate how much your great questions. I appreciate, as I said at the top, what, sort of dedicated independent thinkers. I admire the collaboration and the collaborative, and it was an honor for me to be part of it and to see you all. And let's find a way to stay in touch.
Let's do. And Lyle and I will be reaching out to you for the Emerging Journalism Project too. So thank you again for your time. Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.